So Pete Davidson and Ariana Grande are no longer getting married, and the question is, who gets to keep the $93,000 engagement ring? I was listening to Howard Stern this morning and they were talking about the breakup between Pete Davidson and Ariana Grande, and I don't care about any of this tabloid celebrity gossip nonsense, and there's no but to that. What struck me is that I found out that Pete Davidson's engagement ring to Ariana Grande cost $93,000 US. I mean, that's like $1 million Canadian. So what I discovered in my 1 hour of thorough research is that there's basically 3 or maybe 4 lines of thought on this. One line of thought is that it is a gift, pure and simple. That's it. You gift it, you have no expectation of getting it back ever for whatever the reason. The second line of thought is that it is a conditional gift, which itself has 2 branches of thought. We'll get into that in a second. The third line of thought is that it is compensation, sort of like not remuneration, but say compensation for their contributions to the overall relationship. So gift, conditional gift, compensation. Compensation and gift does not get returned if the relationship ends. The conditional gift is interesting because it branches out into 2 possibilities. If that marriage becomes impossible to fulfill for whatever the reason, the gift should be returned because the condition on which it was gifted is no longer possible. Hence, the condition will not be satisfied, the gift has to be returned. But there's another line of thought to the effect that fault matters. It matters who is at fault for the condition being unable to be fulfilled. Take the traditional example of a man giving a woman a ring. Conditional on marriage. She now becomes his fiancée. If, let's say, she decides she can't marry him anymore, she is the one who is rendering the condition impossible to be fulfilled and therefore has the obligation to give the ring back. If, for example, he breaks off the marriage, he cannot demand the ring back because he is the reason for which the condition has become impossible to fulfill. Then getting even more into it, if he calls off the marriage because of her infidelity or she calls off the marriage because of his infidelity, then it becomes a question of whether or not the person who is making the condition impossible to be fulfilled is doing so because of the fault of the other. And it's amazing, this has been adjudicated upon by our courts who have gone both ways depending on the situation. And the interesting thing about the entire debate is that it actually goes back to 1742 England. And the original purpose of the engagement ring was to bind the parties on a promise to marry. If the parties no longer married, could no longer marry, or would no longer get married, then it had to be returned because the marriage was not going to take place. And apparently in a number of jurisdictions, Ontario, Alberta, Manitoba, legislation has taken out the issue of fault in determining whether or not the ring can go back. And that line of thought is that a gift is a gift, and you don't get to litigate over the engagement ring if the anticipated marriage goes south. And I don't mean like goes south to Mexico or Florida, I mean like doesn't happen. Now I should preface this video does not constitute legal advice. Nothing in this video is legal advice. I'm not giving any legal opinions. If you have any questions as to who owns the engagement ring that you have gifted to somebody else, consult an attorney in your proper jurisdiction, and they will give you an opinion after having assessed all of the facts that you tell them. Now that said, apparently in Ontario, even though they've taken out the issue of fault, the courts still have to decide whether or not the engagement ring was given as a conditional gift, conditional upon marriage specifically. And the courts have even gone so far as to assess the circumstances in which the ring was given, whether or not it was specifically an engagement ring, whether or not the engagement ring was given with certain conditions, such that if a party breached on the terms of the engagement, they were the ones who were breaking the engagement, therefore responsible to return the ring. And the common law principle is set out in Iliopoulos versus Getas, and I'm going to read you the section from that decision right now. Though the origin of the engagement ring has been forgotten, it still remains a character of a pledge or something to bind the bargain or contract to marry, and it is given on the understanding that a party who breaks the contract must return it. Whether the ring is a pledge or a conditional gift, the result is the same. The engagement ring given by the plaintiff to the defendant was given upon the implied condition that it should be returned if the defendant, i.e. the lady, I don't even know why I would say that, broke off the engagement. She did break the contract and therefore must return the ring. It seems reasonably clear that Sherman J. impliedly held that if the plaintiff himself had broken off the promise, he could not get the ring back. This I hold to be the correct legal view. If a woman who has received a ring refuses to fulfill the conditions of the gift, she must return it. So, on the other hand, I think that if a man has, without a recognized legal justification, refused to carry out his promise of marriage, he cannot demand the return of the engagement ring. So, what do we take away from all of this? Because law is romantic and makes everything interesting, when you propose to your significant other, you must be clear on the terms and conditions of your engagement. When you give that engagement ring, you must specify that it is conditional upon the marriage, and should the person breach the engagement, and you must enumerate all of the reasons which shall constitute a breach of the promise to marriage, you shall be entitled to get back your ring. Isn't law glamorous? If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I do law vlogs multiple times a week, cooking vlogs, GoPro vlogs. GoPro. I play with GoPros, drones, family stuff, good stuff. Like, share, subscribe, notification bell right there. Subscribe button right there. I take recommendations. Any questions that are not too hard to research and don't take more than an hour.